Makoma Lekalakala from EarthLife and Ferrial Adam is from Climate and Energy Campaigners. She'll join us a little bit later from Greenpeace. But Makoma, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, and good morning to your viewers.
Please tell us more about your organization, EarthLife.
EarthLife Africa Johannesburg is an environmental justice organization, and we work more around encouraging people to take action around climate change and also critiquing the energy regime in the country.
Has anything changed since the COP18 last year?
Nothing has changed that much, and I think it's a cause for concern. The Philippines has given us a wake-up call. Our governments have been meeting since COP1 up until now, and all what we find is that it's more talk. They're just idling whilst the planet it's coming to its destruction.
Now, COP has been happening for as long as I know, every year for the past 19 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
What is the reason behind COP, and how important is it?
The importance of the Conference of the Parties under the UNFCCC is to come up with a legally binding convention. That convention that would actually commit all governments and all people in the world to contribute towards the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere. And it's just unfortunate that this has not been happening. It has been meeting after meeting, and this commitment, it's long overdue. And this is what we expect from our governments when they go to COP19, to be able to come up with that legally binding agreement. And that legally binding agreement would actually move us towards making sure that we don't experience climate disasters like the one that has happened a few days in the Philippines. That convention would actually go towards making sure that the poor don't bear the brunt of climate change disasters. The people who are bearing the brunt of climate change, of global warming, of increasing temperatures are the poor, in particular the poor in Africa.
Now, what is the sticking point behind this legal binding agreement which can't be reached by all the countries?
The sticking point at current is that this Conference of the Parties, or the UNFCCC, aiming to come up with a legally binding agreement, it's that this has been corporatized. It's corporations who are profiting from climate who are actually at the helm of these discussions, and governments in such are not having that voice. And the governments should be talking on behalf of all sectors of society, in particular poor people who are unable to make a living. But however, the corporations has taken charge of the Conference of the Parties, and that's why we see that there's no legally binding agreement that is being reached, due to the fact that those who profit from the climate disasters are the ones that wants to prolong as much as they can, and this mostly it's corporations that are from the northern countries.
Are you suggesting, though, that this is just a talk shop?
Yes, it has become a talk shop, and it's like people's conscience, in particular those that attend, don't have a conscience. If you have a conscience, you would not allow people to be destroyed by the climate disasters that we face currently, and also people and governments would be able to do something concrete to make sure that they make their contribution. For an example, the South African government is continuously addicted to coal, and Anglo American, it's one of those companies that actually is sponsoring a conference in Warsaw as we speak now on coal, saying coal is the way to go, whilst the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change had actually given us an assessment report number 5 to say climate change, it's caused, it's definitely certain that it's caused by the burning of fossil fuels, up to 95% certain. And in particular, here in South Africa, we find that the burning of fossil fuels, it's our energy generation on coal, and that is a cause for concern for us.
Also joining us in studio, we have Ferrial Adam. She is the Climate and Energy Campaigner of Greenpeace to join in this conversation. Ferrial, good morning to you.
Good morning.
What do you make of COP19 coming up right now?
I mean, I share a lot of what Makoma has just been saying. Greenpeace Africa has been saying that we need to put more emphasis on having outcomes from these meetings. And it's 20 years. And for a long time, people still debated whether climate change was still an issue. And now we know for sure that it is a concern. It's 95% certain that it's human activities. We need more commitment from government. So that's it's 20 years and we still don't have enough commitment on climate change.
But what sort of commitments are we looking for?
Well, at the start, because we know that one of the key causes is fossil fuel production and use. So we're saying we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and the one way we can do that is by investing in fossil fuels. We need to look more at renewable energy. And for a long time, there's this voice, just like there was a voice that said, is climate change real? There's a voice that's saying renewable energy can't meet our demands. But Germany and other countries have shown that renewable energy can meet our demands, and we don't have to build more coal and invest in dirty fossil fuels.
Now, do you consider then that climate change is the greatest probably environmental problem facing our planet currently?
I think yes, because it's not just climate change in isolation. It's the spin-off effects from that. So when you have an increasing in temperature, say for example for Africa, what we're going to experience is more drought, more extreme weather patterns. That will impact on our food security. So it's definitely not just an isolated environmental issue. It's something that relates to our way of life, and that is why it's such a big problem.
What is our contribution as Africa, as a continent, to this pollution, this worldwide problem that we have?
Historically, Africa has not really made that contribution. The only country that stands out is South Africa. And South Africa basically stands out because of the generation of electricity, coal-generated electricity. Our electricity is up to 90% generated from coal, whilst we could move towards renewable energy that Ferrial had spoken about, that are abundant, unexploited in the country.
And you call it dirty energy, I would imagine.
It is dirty energy because it contributes towards the concentration of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere that ultimately leads us to have climate change.
Now, the UN panel of climate scientists predict that a buildup of planet-warming greenhouse gases in the atmosphere will cause more droughts and floods, as you indicated earlier on. But what can we expect? What is the ultimate that we can look forward to if we don't curb it right now?
Well, I mean, like I said, the first thing that we're going to be looking at is food insecurity. So you're going to have more droughts and you're going to be unable to feed your population. And that is a very big challenge. We already see it happening. If we look at Kenya, they've been experiencing a drought in the northeast of Kenya for about 10 years. And they just cannot produce food on that land. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge is water. We're a water scarce country. So if we're going to have more droughts and we're going to lose more of our water, how are we going to function as, in South Africa, but also Africa as a whole? But then you're also going to have migration because of that, and that will put added pressure on the resource that we do have. So it's not just, it's not a minor issue. It's not something that's isolated that we can fix in one corner like South Africa and forget the rest of Africa. It has to be a whole view of what's happening on the continent.
Now, you mentioned Typhoon Haiyan a little bit earlier, Makoma. Do you think that is a wake-up call, maybe?
We have had so many incidences that would have presented themselves as a wake-up call, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Response report also is a wake-up call to the negotiators, and I think much more. If you find the situation in Africa, women are the face of climate change. There's so much poverty. People don't have water, food security issues that Ferrial has raised. That is a wake-up call, and we're living through that. So we just want people to have an active conscience and say, is this how we want the way to live, or is this what we really want the future to be like?
Now, talking about action, you, and we understand that you'll be engaging in a march for action on climate change. Please tell us a little bit more about that. When is that happening?
The march happens globally, mid-conference of the parties, and here in South Africa, in particular in Johannesburg, we'll be partnering with other organizations, including Greenpeace Africa, for a march. That march would want to send a message to the negotiators. The message that we want to send to them is that governments here and abroad have still not taken appropriate action to counter the horrifying threats of climate change. And also, the other thing is that if they keep on doing business as usual, meeting, talk shops, and not listening to citizens' concerns globally, we or also including them, we're saying we don't have to create a bleak future for our children. But the march in all, we're raising a few issues. One of the issues is around the Arctic 30, the activists who actually were peacefully demonstrating to raise concerns around climate change and the causes of climate change, the sources of climate change, the drilling in the Arctic for gas. And that's one of the issues, because it's a solidarity march also with all the people in the world who are experiencing negative impacts of climate change. But the other thing also that we're raising that is more local, we're saying we're raising that to say South Africa must really be responsible in generating its electricity. They should not move. They should stop their addiction towards coal. They should stop their addiction towards fossil fuels. One is that we're saying the fracking in the Karoo, it's not the way to go. The nuclear build that is being proposed, it's also not the way to go. All this are carbon intensive, and that we should move away from that. And the other point that we're raising, we're saying we need to move as quickly as we can towards renewable energy and renewable energy technologies. The march will be starting at 9 o'clock, starting with a series of stunts, drumming. People will be coming and doing various actions to highlight the issue. And we'll have a procession march towards Anglo-American, which I had mentioned earlier, that it's actually sponsoring a conference in Poland as we speak now on coal. And there, then we would be having a few other stunts and speakers, but the basis of what we're doing on Saturday, it's a solidarity action with people all over the world. It's happening in all other countries. And what is important for us is that it's time for the leaders to listen to the citizens and do something now. It's long overdue.
Now, this is a local march in Johannesburg, but from Greenpeace side, you are busy in Poland. You staged a Poland coal protest on the eve of the UN climate task. What were the reasons for staging that protest?
Well, it was also very much to highlight the impacts of fossil fuel on climate change. And we basically, some of the wording was saying that drought starts here, extreme weather starts here. And what we're trying to highlight is that these coal-fired power stations are the culprits, and we need to stop building a coal in the world. But also linking to that was to highlight that it's getting harder and harder to be civil society and to protest, and our voices are getting smaller, because the Arctic 30, which is 28 activists, Greenpeace activists, and 2 freelance journalists, have been charged in Russia for their protest, peaceful protest. And they've been charged with piracy, and then which is up to 15 years in prison, and hooliganism in Russia. So we're also calling for the Russian government to drop these charges. These were peaceful protesters, and they actually, the voice of the people highlighting the problems around climate change, they should not be jailed.
Now, Makoma, in closing, what are you saying to our government, governments around the world, about climate change?
The time for talking is over. We need to act now. And for South Africa, a just transition towards renewable energy, it's the way to go. And a just transition would mean that people would enjoy one of their basic human rights, access to electricity. And also in the Bill of Rights, it's enshrined that people have got a right to clean air. And this is what is very important for us. These are the basic, upholding the basic human rights. So governments must act. We need to stop being addicted to coal. Renewable energy is the way to go, and it's people's power. And from Greenpeace side?
It's very similar. I mean, we're saying that climate change is happening now. It's not something in the future. We have to deal with it every day. And the longer that they take with the talks, the harder it is going to be to deal with catastrophic climate change. So very much in what Makoma is saying, the time for talking is over. We need action. And we also need commitments from national governments. It's not enough that developing countries are saying they still need to grow. They can do that without being addicted to coal.
Are you joining forces and putting resources together in order to fight this fight?
We always work together.
Everyone has got a commitment. As long as you are a citizen in South Africa, in Africa, world over, you have to do your part. If you don't do your part, that means you're leaving a bleak future for the next generation. We all have an obligation and a commitment to make.
I must say, two very courageous women sitting in studio with me here today. Thank you so much for joining us in studio. That's from Makoma Lekalakala. She is from EarthLife and Ferrial Adam is from Climate and Energy Campaign. She's a Climate and Energy Campaigner from Greenpeace. Thank you so much again for joining us in studio.